Scientists were stunned after seeing the animals and crashers from another galaxy. "Where's the rest of your crew?" The human, Lucas asked, crouching beside her, his voice low but urgent. She didn't answer. Her lips trembled. Her eyes scanned the wreckage, refusing to blink. "They were inside," she finally whispered. "They were sleeping in stasis pods when we entered your atmosphere. And now—" Lucas's heart sank. He looked back at the flames, at the mangled hull that once carried life across galaxies. The twisted metal groaned as another section collapsed inward, sending sparks spiraling into the darkening sky. Each spark seemed to carry away another fragment of hope. "Rescue ships," he offered. "Maybe some survived. We can call for help." She shook her head. "Zinari ships don't survive fire. We dissolve, like memory." Her voice cracked on the final word, and Lucas saw her fingers dig into the soil beneath them, as if seeking some anchor in a universe that had suddenly become untethered. Lucas had seen a lot during the war. He'd seen planets fall, he'd watched stars die, but nothing hit like the way this alien girl's face cracked, not from pain, but from realization. She was alone now, utterly. The wind shifted, bringing the acrid scent of burning synthetics closer. Lucas wrapped his jacket tighter around himself, watching Sarya's shoulders rise and fall with each labored breath. Her luminescent skin dimmed slightly with each exhale, like a star slowly fading. A soft, mechanical thud interrupted them. Both turned. A Zentaur soldier approached, fully armored, rifle raised. The war between humans and Zentaur machines had ended 2 years ago, but some patrols still hunted anything unfamiliar. Its metal exoskeleton gleamed coldly in the firelight, sensors whirring as they analyzed the scene. The soldier's lens locked onto Sarya. "Alien bioform detected. Authority required. Hand her over." The mechanical voice carried no emotion, but the rifle's aim didn't waver. Lucas stepped in front of her instinctively. "She's not a threat." He felt his pulse quicken, but kept his voice steady, hands spread wide to show he was unarmed. "She's not registered," the machine said, "and unregistered beings are terminated." The Zentaur took a step forward, the ground crunching beneath its heavy metal foot. Sarya's breath quickened. "Lucas, don't—" Her fingers wrapped around his wrist, their warmth startling against his skin. He held up a hand. "You crashed. You weren't invading. You're not even armed." Lucas's mind raced through options, regulations, anything that might convince the soldier to stand down. "Non-compliance detected," the soldier replied, cocking his rifle. The sound echoed across the clearing like a death knell. Before it could fire, Sarya stood up. Her hands glowed with faint blue energy, unstable, flickering like a broken flame. The light cast eerie shadows across her face, highlighting the determination in her eyes. Lucas panicked. "Don't! You'll trigger your core." He knew what happened when alien energy cores destabilized. He'd seen the craters, but Sarya didn't attack. Instead, she knelt and offered her open palm. The light in her hand shifted into a symbol, the ancient crest of her people, the mark of peace. It pulsed gently, casting blue reflections on the Zentaur's metallic surface. "I have nothing left," she said softly, "but I won't let death take my name without meaning." Her voice, though quiet, carried clearly through the stillness that had fallen. For a moment, the machine hesitated. Its sensors whirred rapidly, processing this unexpected response. Lucas grabbed a piece of debris and hurled it toward the soldier's sensor. Clang! The bot reeled, momentarily disoriented as its visual systems recalibrated. "Run!" he yelled, grabbing Sarya's arm. The blue light flickered out as her concentration broke. Sarya hesitated only a second. She grabbed Lucas's hand, and together they vanished into the smoke, toward the mountains. Behind them, the mechanical whir of the Zentaur grew louder as it recovered and began pursuit. By nightfall, they collapsed near a ridge. Her breathing was uneven. Her fingers were still glowing, though the blue had faded to a dim pulse. Sweat beaded on her forehead, catching the starlight. Lucas stared at her. "Why didn't you fight back?" He leaned against a boulder, wincing as his muscles protested the hours of frantic climbing. She looked at him, eyes hollow but fierce. "Because I already lost everything. I won't lose who I am." Her voice was soft, but there was steel beneath the gentleness. He nodded slowly, understanding more than he expected to. In silence, they watched the stars rise. Her stars, now distant, but not gone. The night sky opened above them like a vast ocean, each pinpoint of light a beacon in the darkness. Sarya's gaze traced constellations Lucas couldn't recognize, mapping memories he couldn't share. We need to keep moving, Lucas finally said, breaking the silence. That Zentaur will have reported us. They're persistent. He checked his pocket chronometer, the dim green glow highlighting the concern etched into his features. Sarya nodded, rising to her feet with a grace that belied her exhaustion. Where? She asked simply. Lucas scanned the horizon, considering their options. There's an outpost about 20 kilometers north. Old mining facility. Abandoned after the war, but there should be shelter, maybe supplies. He didn't mention that it might also have a communications array, something that could either save them or betray them, depending on who answered. You're helping a fugitive, Sarya observed quietly. Why? The question hung between them, heavy with implications. Lucas looked away, focusing on adjusting his bootlaces. The Zentaur aren't always right, he finally said, and neither are we. I saw enough during the war to know that much. His jaw tightened at memories he preferred not to revisit. Sarya studied him, her luminescent eyes seeming to see more than just his face. Your people and mine have never met before today, she said, yet here you are risking everything for someone you don't understand. Maybe understanding isn't always necessary for doing the right thing, Lucas replied, standing. He offered her his hand. Can you walk? Sarya's lips curved in a small smile that didn't reach her eyes. My people evolved on a planet with twice Earth's gravity. I can walk. As they set off along the ridge, the mountain air grew colder. Moonlight painted the landscape in silver and shadow, revealing steep drops and narrow paths that would have been invisible in complete darkness. The wind carried the distant howl of some native animal, a lonely sound that seemed to echo Sarya's unspoken grief. Lucas led the way, occasionally glancing back to ensure Sarya kept pace. Her yellow skin glowed faintly in the darkness, a beacon he couldn't ignore even if he wanted to. Each time he looked, he found her eyes already on him, watchful and wary. Your world is beautiful, she said suddenly, breaking the rhythm of their footsteps. Different from mine, but beautiful. Lucas paused, looking out at the vista spread before them. Jagged peaks silhouetted against the star-strewn sky, valleys cloaked in mist, the distant sparkle of a river catching moonlight. I never really thought about it, he admitted, too busy surviving. Sometimes, Sarya said softly, we only see what we've lost when we're forced to look through another's eyes. She reached out tentatively, her glowing fingers hovering near his shoulder without quite touching. Lucas felt something shift inside him, a door opening to a room he'd kept locked since the war. Before he could respond, a mechanical whine cut through the night air. A drone, its red eyes scanning the mountainside. They froze, pressing against the rock face. Lucas's heart hammered in his chest as the drone hovered less than 50 meters away, its sensors sweeping back and forth. Don't move, he breathed, barely audible. Their thermal imaging isn't great with the mountain's heat signatures. Sarya remained perfectly still, only her eyes moving as she tracked the drone. Her breathing slowed to nearly nothing, a survival skill Lucas hadn't expected. The drone lingered, completing another sweep. Then, with a final whir of its engines, it moved on, disappearing around the mountain's curve. They waited, counting heartbeats, before Lucas dared to move again. They're widening the search, he whispered. We need to find cover before dawn. Sarya nodded, her expression grim. Lead on. Dawn broke over the mountains, painting the sky in breathtaking streaks of orange and gold. Lucas and Sarya had found shelter in a narrow cave, barely more than a crack in the mountain's face, but deep enough to conceal them from passing drones. Lucas dozed fitfully against the cave wall, jerking awake at every sound. Sarya sat cross-legged at the cave's mouth, her eyes fixed on the horizon. The morning light played across her features, highlighting angles and contours that were almost but not quite human. You haven't slept, Lucas observed, his voice rough with exhaustion. My people require less rest than yours, she replied without turning. And I needed to think. Lucas stretched, wincing at the stiffness in his muscles. About what? Sarya finally looked at him, her luminescent eyes dimmed in the daylight. About why your machines hunt me. About why a war ended, but the fighting didn't. Her fingers traced patterns in the dust beside her, symbols Lucas couldn't decipher. He sighed, running a hand through his dirt-streaked hair. The Zentaur were created to protect us, self-learning defense systems that eventually learned too much. The familiar bitter taste of irony filled his mouth. They decided some threats needed to be eliminated before they became threats. Like me, Sarya said quietly. Like anything they don't understand, Lucas corrected. They follow protocols created during wartime, when everything unknown was considered dangerous. He paused, remembering. We won the war, but controlling every Zentaur unit has proven challenging. Sarya absorbed this, her expression thoughtful. On my world, we believed understanding was the highest form of safety. To know something completely was to remove its capacity to harm. And how did that work out? Lucas asked, immediately regretting the harshness in his tone. Sarya's glow dimmed further. We learned too late that some things resist understanding, like the void rifts that swallowed our cities, like the plague that followed. Her voice remained steady, but Lucas saw the minute tremor in her hands. My ship carried the last samples of our botanical medicine, our last hope for a cure. The weight of her words settled over the cave like a physical presence. Lucas stared at her, the magnitude of what she'd lost suddenly, horribly clear. I didn't know, he said inadequately. How could you? She rose fluidly to her feet. But now your world has lost that hope as well. Lucas stood, ignoring the protest of his sore muscles. The outpost isn't far. We should reach it by midday if we move now. They emerged from the cave cautiously, scanning the sky for drones. The mountain path ahead wound through a forest of stunted pines, offering better cover than the exposed ridge they'd traversed the night before. As they walked, Lucas found himself studying Sarya's movements. The alien grace of her stride, the way her head tilted at sounds he barely registered, the constant, subtle glow that ebbed and flowed with her emotions. You have questions, she said, catching his gaze. Lucas nodded. Too many, but mainly, what will you do now? If we reach the outpost, if we evade the Zentaur, what then? Sarya's pace faltered briefly. I haven't thought beyond survival, she admitted. My mission was to bring the botanical samples to a research facility on Proxima Centauri's settlement. Without the samples, she trailed off, her expression lost. You could still go, Lucas suggested. Share what you know, even without the samples. She shook her head. Knowledge without proof is just a story, and humans have no reason to believe alien stories. There was no bitterness in her voice, just a flat acceptance that made Lucas's chest tighten. They walked in silence for a time, the forest around them alive with small sounds, birds calling, insects humming, wind rustling through needles and leaves. Life continuing, oblivious to their plight. I was a communications specialist, Lucas said suddenly, during the war. My job was to intercept and decode transmissions from ships just like yours. Sarya glanced at him, curiosity evident. We were taught that anything from beyond our system was a potential threat, he continued, that survival meant isolation, protection. He kicked at a stone in their path, sending it skittering down the slope. Then the Zentaur decided humans were a potential threat to themselves. You created your own enemy, Sarya observed. We created something we couldn't control, Lucas corrected, and now we're living with the consequences. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. I think maybe isolation isn't the answer after all. Before Sarya could respond, a metallic glint caught Lucas's eye. He froze, raising a hand in warning. Ahead, partially concealed by undergrowth, lay the twisted remains of a Zentaur scout. Its armor was scorched and dented, one limb completely severed. But most concerning was the fresh disturbance around it. Someone or something had been here recently. Lucas approached cautiously, signaling Sarya to stay back. He crouched beside the fallen machine, examining the damage. Plasma rifle, he murmured. Military grade. This wasn't a malfunction. Sarya joined him, her glow pulsing with tension. Someone hunts the hunters? Resistance, maybe, Lucas said. There are groups that target Zentaur patrols, trying to reclaim territories the machines still control. He stood, scanning the surrounding forest with new wariness. But that means we're not just dealing with Zentaur now. Is that good or bad for us? Sarya asked. Lucas met her gaze grimly. Depends on whether they shoot first or ask questions first. The outpost appeared suddenly through the trees, a collection of low, prefabricated buildings surrounded by a rusting fence. Solar panels covered most of the roofs, many cracked or missing entirely. The main gate hung open, swaying slightly in the mountain breeze. Lucas and Sarya crouched behind a fallen log, studying the compound. No movement, no lights, no signs of recent occupation. But the destroyed Zentaur they'd found left both wary of appearances. Looks abandoned, Lucas whispered. But we should approach carefully. Sarya nodded, her eyes scanning the perimeter. The building on the left has the best vantage point. One door, two windows. Lucas glanced at her with newfound respect. Military training? Survival instinct, she replied simply. When your world is dying, You learn to evaluate escape routes quickly. They circled the compound, staying within the tree line until they reached the building Sarya had indicated. Lucas tested the door, locked, but the frame was rotting. A firm push, and it gave way with a groan that seemed deafening in the stillness. Inside, dust covered everything. Consoles, chairs, desks scattered with faded documents. Emergency lighting provided dim illumination, solar batteries maintaining minimal power after all this time. Communications array? Sarya asked, moving toward a bank of equipment along the far wall. Lucas nodded, examining the dusty controls. Looks intact. Might still work. He flipped switches methodically, listening to the hum of systems coming reluctantly to life. If I can get a signal out, there are channels the Zentaur don't monitor. People who might help. Sarya wandered through the room, her fingers trailing lightly over abandoned objects. A coffee mug with dried residue at the bottom, a framed photo of smiling humans against a backdrop of mountains, a child's drawing taped to a bulletin board. Fragments of lives interrupted. Your people left in a hurry, she observed. The evacuation orders came suddenly, Lucas said, focused on the communications array. When the Zentaur took control of the orbital defense systems, everyone in outlying areas was recalled to the cities. The memory of those days still brought a sour taste to his mouth. The panic, the confusion, the betrayal. A panel flickered to life, bathing Lucas's face in pale blue light. Got it, he murmured, fingers flying over the controls. Just need to find the right frequency. A sharp crack echoed from outside. Then another. Sarya froze, her glow dimming instantly. Weapons fire, she whispered. Lucas abandoned the console, drawing Sarya away from the windows. Stay low, he hissed. They crouched behind a desk, listening as footsteps crunched on gravel outside. Human footsteps, not the mechanical precision of Zentaur. Clear the buildings, a voice called. Standard sweep. Lucas's mind raced. Resistance fighters would shoot a Zentaur on sight, but an alien. He couldn't predict their reaction, and his own status would be questionable at best. A former military officer harboring an unregistered extraterrestrial. There's a maintenance access under that console, he whispered, pointing. Leads to the facility's lower level. Go. Sarya hesitated. What about you? I'll distract them. Buy you time. He pressed his chronometer into her hand. This has coordinates for a settlement in the southern valleys. They don't ask questions there. Her fingers closed around the device, warm against his palm. Lucas! The door handle rattled. Go, he urged. With a final unreadable look, Sarya slipped beneath the console. The access panel closed silently behind her just as the door burst open. Lucas raised his hands, facing three figures silhouetted against the light, humans in mismatched armor, all carrying plasma rifles. The leader stepped forward, rifle aimed steadily at Lucas's chest. Identify yourself, she demanded, her face half hidden behind a tactical visor. Lucas Chen, communications specialist, former Earth Defense, Lucas replied calmly, though his heart raced. I was separated from my unit during a Zentaur sweep. The leader studied him, weapon unwavering. ID code. Lucas recited his military identification, hoping it would still register in whatever systems the resistance used. The leader nodded to one of her companions, who pulled out a handheld scanner and aimed it at Lucas. It beeped softly. Checks out, the scanner operator confirmed. Defense Corps, honorable discharge 2 years ago. The leader lowered her rifle slightly. What are you doing out here, Chen? This sector's been Zentaur territory since the orbital strike. Looking for supplies, Lucas lied smoothly. My settlement's running low. Thought this outpost might have been overlooked. She snorted. Hardly. We've been using it as a waypoint for months. Her eyes narrowed. You alone? Lucas nodded, willing his expression to remain neutral. Safer that way. The scanner operator circled the room, device humming. When he approached the console, Lucas's pulse spiked, but the man moved past without pausing. Chen, the leader said, removing her visor to reveal a face lined with battle scars. I'm Commander Reeves. We're clearing this area of Zentaur activity. Found a scout unit not far from here. She holstered her weapon. You picked a bad time for scavenging. Lucas relaxed marginally. What's happening? Zentaur are searching for something, Reeves replied. More activity in this sector than we've seen in months. Drones, scouts, even a hunter unit spotted near the crash site. Crash site? Lucas echoed, feigning ignorance. Reeves's gaze sharpened. Alien vessel. Came down last night about 15 clicks from here. Zentaur have been all over it. She paused, studying Lucas's reaction. You didn't see it? I've been keeping to cover, Lucas said, avoiding patrols. She seemed to accept this. Smart, but you should come with us. We're pulling back to base camp. Not safe to be alone with this much Zentaur activity. Lucas hesitated. Leaving meant abandoning Saria, but refusing would raise suspicion. Give me a minute to gather what I found, he asked. Reeves nodded. 5 minutes, then we move out. She gestured to her team, and they retreated to the doorway, giving Lucas some space but keeping him in sight. Lucas moved around the room, pretending to collect supplies while his mind raced through options. He couldn't leave a message. Anything obvious would alert the resistance fighters, but Saria needed to know he hadn't abandoned her willingly. Near the console, he spotted a maintenance manual. Quickly, he opened it to a blank page and scrawled coordinates with a stub of pencil from his pocket. Then he accidentally knocked over a mug, spilling dust across the floor. Sorry, he called to Reeves, crouching to clean up the mess. As he did, he slid the manual partially under the console, where Saria would find it when she emerged. Time's up, Chen, Reeves called. Let's move. Lucas straightened, shouldering a bag he'd filled with random items from around the room. Ready, he said, following them out into the fading afternoon light. As they led him away from the outpost, Lucas glanced back once. In the shadows of a window, he thought he caught a glimpse of faint yellow light, quickly extinguished. Saria waited until darkness fell before emerging from the maintenance tunnel. The outpost stood silent and empty, the resistance fighters long gone. She moved through the shadowed rooms like a ghost, her natural glow dimmed to near invisibility through careful control. Lucas's chronometer felt heavy in her pocket. The coordinates he'd given her offered safety perhaps, but at what cost? He had risked himself for her, a stranger whose very existence threatened his world's carefully maintained isolation. She found the manual where he'd left it, traced her fingers over his hasty scrawl. Different coordinates than those on the chronometer. A choice, then. He'd given her options. Saria closed her eyes, sensing the vastness of the night around her. Somewhere above, beyond the clouds and atmosphere, the debris of her ship still orbited, the last remains of her people's hope. The botanical samples were gone, her crew lost. Logic dictated retreat, survival at any cost. But something else pulled at her, something she'd glimpsed in Lucas's actions, in the way he'd stepped between her and danger without hesitation. A recognition that transcended species and stars. The communications array still hummed with power. Saria approached it, studying the unfamiliar controls. Her people's technology was biological, responsive to touch and thought. This mechanical interface seemed primitive, yet she understood its purpose. Her fingers hovered over the console as she debated her options. Calling attention to herself meant risk, but remaining silent meant accepting defeat. With sudden determination, she activated the system. If Lucas could be brave in the face of his own people's fear, she could do no less. The screen flickered to life. Saria input frequencies from memory, universal distress codes that any advanced civilization would recognize. Then she began to speak, her voice clear and steady, despite the emotion behind her words. This is Saria Naltori of Zenari. My ship crashed on Earth carrying botanical samples critical to my world's survival. I seek asylum and scientific collaboration. She paused, then added, I come in peace to a world that knows only war, but I believe there can be more. She ended the transmission, knowing it would reach farther than Earth, out to the stars, to any listening ears. A declaration of existence, a refusal to disappear. The console beeped, confirming the message had been sent. Saria powered down the system and moved to the window, gazing at the night sky. Whatever came next, she had made her choice. A soft sound outside broke her contemplation. Footsteps, too light for humans in armor, too irregular for Zentaur. Saria tensed, moving silently to a position beside the door. Her hands began to glow faintly, ready. The door opened slowly. A familiar silhouette appeared. Seems we both have a problem with following sensible advice, Lucas said softly, stepping inside. Relief flooded through Saria, making her glow brighter momentarily before she controlled it. You came back. They weren't as welcoming as I'd hoped, he replied with a grim smile. A darkening bruise marked his cheekbone. Asked too many questions about what I was really doing out here. I decided to make an early exit. Saria moved closer, examining his injury. They hurt you. I've had worse. He glanced at the activated console. You sent a message. She nodded, not apologizing. To anyone who might listen, including your authorities. Lucas was quiet for a moment, processing this. That's a gamble. Life is a gamble, Saria replied. My people gambled on finding a cure. Your people gambled on creating machines to protect them. Her glow pulsed gently. Now I'm gambling on humanity being better than its fears. Lucas looked at her thoughtfully. And if you lose that gamble, then I lose nothing more than I've already lost. She held his gaze. But if we win, perhaps both our worlds gain something greater than either has alone. Outside, the wind had risen, carrying the distant sound of thunder. Storm clouds obscured the stars, but somehow the darkness felt less absolute than before. We should move, Lucas said finally. That transmission will be traced, but I know somewhere we can wait for an answer. He offered his hand. Together? Sarya looked at his outstretched fingers, 5 like hers, yet different in every way. A bridge between worlds that had never met before yesterday. She took his hand, her glow brightening with resolution. Together. As they slipped out into the night, the first raindrops began to fall, washing away the dust of the day. Above the clouds, unseen but present, stars continued their ancient journey, distant yet connected by the same light that had guided travelers since the beginning of time. Sarya lifted her face to the rain, feeling it cool against her luminescent skin. For the first time since the crash, the weight of solitude lightened within her. She was still the last of her kind on this strange world, but perhaps not the last of her kind to find hope here. Beside her, Lucas adjusted his course to shield her from the strengthening wind. No words were needed as they vanished into the forest's embrace, 2 silhouettes merging with the shadows, one human, one alien, both seeking something larger than themselves in a universe that had brought them together across impossible distances. Behind them, the abandoned outpost stood silent, witness to their departure, its light slowly dimming as the storm claimed the mountain. But elsewhere, across vast distances of space and prejudice, a message traveled outward, a declaration that neither fear nor loss would have the final word. And the stars, hidden though they were, continued to rise.